On this week's episode of Life Drives Success, Gary Brackett, CEO of Stacked Pickle. Gary, what is up? Thank you for spending some time with us. I'm very much looking forward to our chat this morning.
So am I, man. And I got to thank you because yesterday, guess what came into the mail?
Oh, yeah. Look at that thing.
Shameless plug, man. So I'm excited to dig in, man. Congrats on the book.
All right.
Huge honor, man. So I can't wait to read it.
Truth be told, I was curious, what is a Gary Brackett autograph worth on eBay? And my book is worth far less than what yours would be.
Yeah, but you know what? It's a start. You know what's amazing? So many people want to write books and publish their thoughts and ideals. You just never get around to it. So the fact that you accomplished that, huge task is commendable.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and thanks for obviously. Now you just plugged me on our own show. So, all right, let's kick into this, and I think there's a lot to unpack with your life and how it's led to your success today. But let's give kind of the highlights of. You were obviously you're in your second career now. Your first career was being an NFL football player. How did that come about? What point in life do you start realizing that you might have the skills to be at the top of arguably one of the hardest things to do?
So it's funny. My first ever job was in the restaurant industry as a dish boy, and from that point, I learned a lot of valuable lessons. One is delegation. And two, hard work, but two, I was just fascinated at how I felt like restaurants is like the ultimate team sport. And when I was finished with the NFL career, I played 9 years with the Indianapolis Colts, had a successful run there. And when I was done, I thought I'd retire. I thought, that's what you do. You retire. I'm 30 years old. So I'm golfing, awful on the golf course. And at the same time, my wife is a doctor. So she's in medical school, working 67 hours a week, grinding, coming home in scrubs and blowing on it. And my 3-year-old son, after one of these, 110 rounds on a golf course, he asked me, "Dad, what are you going to do when you grow up?" And I'm like, "What? What do you mean when I grow up?" So it's just one of those aha moments. It's like, man, I can't have my kids view me like this, right? I got to do something. I went back to school. I got my MBA from George Washington. And then after I got my MBA, I felt like I had the skills that were necessary to jump inside of this business.
When you're an NFL player, I mean, especially at the beginning, did you envision it ending, or is it hard to see the end? Is it moving too fast to take it all in?
Yeah, it's interesting, man. So I was a walk-on in college, and I was a free agent in the NFL. So for me, playing one season was just like a dream come true. And while I was playing, I was taking executive education courses, preparing myself to have a successful transition whenever that might come.
All right. So you're a walk-on in college. You're a free agent when you're going into the NFL. One thing that I talk about often is the value of the chip on the shoulder. You can put it in a Michael Jordan sense in that he was cut from his high school team, or a Tom Brady sense in that every NFL team overlooked him 5 times over. Did you feel like that was a chip on your shoulder when you knew you had the skill set? Did you care that much about what you were trying to accomplish, or were you so in the moment that it wasn't acting as big of a motivation tool as it may for others?
Yeah, that's. I mean, I think in the book Grit, it talks about different studies on how Ivy League people don't fare as well through adversity than people with community degrees. And I think, like you mentioned, that grit, that chip on my shoulder, that everyone telling me I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't big enough, that I wasn't tall enough, that I didn't come from one of the big universities. That's something that initially I wanted to prove everyone wrong and have massive success. But then after I became successful and I was a starter in year 3 and 4, and we're going to the playoffs and AFC Championship game, then I switched into the mindset of, stop trying to prove everyone wrong and start trying to prove me right. Yeah. And my competition became me versus me versus the world, or me versus this vision that everyone else tried to portray against me.
Did ego ever come into play? And when you were going through tough times in the NFL or trying to make it to that next season, was ego at all necessary as fuel to make you believe that you could continue doing it?
You know what's funny? I have a very unique perspective, right? Because during my first and second year in my NFL career, I had like drastic adversity. So I lost my father, my mother, and my brother in an 18-month span. And what that does, or what it did for me, it just gave me this sense of gratitude and appreciation of just being alive. And not even being alive, but being alive, getting paid to play this kid's game. So for me, I was never had the ego that, I'm going to be here and I'm better than this guy. I always had the mindset like, I get an opportunity to do what I love and get paid for it. I'm going to maximize the hell out of this. Yeah. And I'm going to show up early. I'm going to stay late. I'm going to watch film. I'm going to study. And I'm going to become the best football player I could possibly be.
So talk about the losses that you went through there. How does that affect you today? I think, and I wrote about this even in the book, that my understanding of a hard day, because I haven't lost some of those people that are really close to me, that my understanding of a tough day is vastly different than yours. But how does that affect you in the life that you live today?
Yeah, that's a good question. So now I'm a parent. I have 3 young children. Gabrielle's 10, Gary Jr. is 7, and Georgia is 5. And again, it's just that appreciation and that gratitude, and the fact that I get the chance to be in my children's life. And I see people in the relationships that they have with their parents. And sometimes it just baffles me, right? You have your parents in your life and you don't visit them, or you don't call them, or you don't have a relationship with them. And it's just amazing to me, whereas like I just, wish I had one more conversation with my mom, or one more, dinner with my brother, or conversation with my dad, and all those things I took for granted when I was, growing up. But now I value those things. So I'm present in my kid's life. And I think Coach Caldwell, he had one of the best sayings, and I take this to heart. And he said, one of your best abilities is your availability. And I had to realize that to my kids, they don't care who daddy is or all the fancy stuff or the autographs. They want me there at, like, my daughter tonight, 5 o'clock at the high school. She's a famous Indiana people. She's giving a speech about Madam C.J. Walker.
That's awesome.
And she wants me there in the front row. So for me, if it's important to her, then it's important for me. And I just want to be available to my kids, like my parents were available to me. And I think that's what I kind of take about, at the end of the day, they're not going to remember, how much I spoiled them, but they will remember how often I was there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Here's, if anybody ends up watching this and is trying to get a takeaway from it, I think human beings, they take life for granted, and they don't take the idea of being present as really the thing that's most valuable. It's more valuable than money. It's more valuable than the car you drive or the house that you live in. And it's partly because they don't recognize, and maybe it's because of what their barometer is or what their measurement is based on their life experiences. But they undervalue life, therefore walk through it in a different way. And in my opinion, that ultimately creates regrets later on.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think it was a book. It was like, all life you chase money, and mess up your health, and then at the end of your life, use the money to buy better health.
Yeah, right.
And it's just like, or you could take care of yourself, the entire time. I think Babe Ruth had a good one. He said, if I knew I would have lived this long, I took better care of myself. And I think it's that type of mindset that everyone say, man, you only live once, you live life short. True, but the average age of life is pretty long, right?
Yeah, right.
So in the grand scheme of things, everything has to be done immediately. The whole mentality that you have to go, That's correct. But I always say, and I always preach, man, you have to rest with the same intensity that you work.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's important. And sometimes when people are chasing things, they forget how important it is to have that time to kind of rest and recover. It's important for your mind, for your body, for your spirit. All those things are important. In order for you to be successful, you got to have, some sort of peace.
So before I leave the football thing and go into business, this topic's been over dialed in of the question of whether there's CTE. So I could care less about that part. It's more so as you've reflected on your life, and obviously you have deep thoughts on how life works, which is phenomenal, because I think that changes the way that you're going to behave and address life for the rest of your life. But do you look back at football differently with that mindset today, that being present, being health, does that change anything of the way as you reflect back on whether you would have done it again?
I absolutely wholeheartedly would have done it again.
Yeah.
And this is coming from someone who played 9 years in NFL, had 8 surgeries. And I think so. The thing that I'm afraid of, and this is a huge topic now, parents not letting their kids play football because of the CTE, because of all the bad things that happen. And okay, we have studies that are probably outdated, that now with the new tackling guidelines maybe don't underline what today's game
Right.
and what today's injuries are like. But I'm more afraid to see what those kids are going to be like that couldn't make their basketball team because there's only 10 people, couldn't make their soccer team because there's 15 people. And football, we used to be the catch-all and created this toughness in the individual. What other team sport are they going to play? I mean, are these kids playing video games, right, in 20 years now going to be – I mean, what kind of leaders are they going to be?
Right.
So that's what I'm afraid of. But I think CTE is interesting because I think your brain is a muscle like any other muscle that you have on your body. And I feel like if you had legs and you stopped walking, like they would probably stop working.
Right.
And I feel like your brain just needs to be constantly fed. And you constantly have to read and stretch it and do different type of things to exercise those muscles. And if you already created damage and then you stop reading and being active with your brain, I think it's gonna deteriorate at a faster clip.
Yeah, so it's all in your approach. It doesn't matter whether you played football or not. It's your approach to how you address active learning that ultimately crafts the way that your brain's going to work. And this is where I think that football question is interesting. I think I don't know that the widget mattered with you. I mean, look, you're if you're not you have to fight to get on the football team in college. You have to fight to get a shot in the NFL. I mean, it's like that determination. No matter what you apply it to, eventually you're gonna find that momentum that no one's gonna be able to touch you. No matter what the widget is, whether it was football, whether it was another sport, whether it was science. In my opinion, it's not necessarily relevant based on who you are as a human. Do you agree with that? Do you disagree with that?
Now, I agree wholeheartedly, and I think it just stems from me in having like an abundance mindset, right? I believe that whatever I put my mind, my energy, my focus, my time to, I can succeed in it. And I don't think that because there are people that came before me or that space is crowded that I'm not able to pave my own way. I think that I'm smart enough and I definitely work hard enough that if I want to put my mind to something, then I can achieve it. So I think you're right. If it wasn't football, it'd have been something else. This just how my personality is set up.
At this point in your life, do you want your kids to say, "My dad was a great football player"? First, obviously, a great dad, great football player, or holy shit, my dad built an awesome restaurant chain. Like, has your passion adjusted as you've now dove into something else?
It's funny, not even my kid, just everyone in general. I just want to be thought of a great businessman, a great entrepreneur, and I think that's what we're kind of on our way to because football was what I did; it wasn't who I was, and I've always separated the two. And I think where people get into trouble is where they think football is who they are and not what they do.
Yeah. So okay, so now let's get into what you're trying to accomplish in the restaurant industry. Before we went on, you're talking about basically even how you've humanized yourself with content. That when a franchise owner comes to you, they there's some sense of trust that's already created in the content that you're building for yourself. Do you do you feel like it's gone as easy as you expected? Is it harder than you expected? Is it more stressful than you expected? Where does it lie on that spectrum right now?
It's definitely. I never really thought it was going to be easy, but it's definitely difficult. Space growing an emerging franchise brand, and that's for a number of reasons. But it obviously takes longer than what I thought it was. Like you read these stories where some of these concepts caught on fire and they had 50 stores in their first year and they kind of blew up. But if you look at franchising in general, that's a very rare case. And most people methodically build units. And I think it's a smart way to do it because the goal is not opening units. The goal is to keep them open and make sure that our franchisees are successful. So because of that, we spend a lot of time of looking at our internal units, our 9-store chain, and figuring out how do we maximize value, so then that we can share those same trade secrets with our franchisees.
Do you feel like, and this is more of a general question, but do you feel like franchisees as a whole have enough of that same chip on the shoulder? Are you finding that they have the place to go to, that is going to, when things get tough, that they're going to be able to drive to that moment?
Someone said this to me, and it made all the sense in the world. And they said that is it my HVAC company? They came to my house, they fixed it. I fired this other company, and they came and they fixed the problem. And I was just so grateful for them, how they operated, how professional they was. And the owner was in business for a long time. He looked at me straight in my eyes, said, "Man, I appreciate it. And but I'm gonna tell you right now, there's gonna be a point in time that something's gonna go wrong, and we might mess something up. And my promise to you is that I'm gonna do everything in my power as it is to fix it." And I think approaching franchisees, telling them that, hey, I pray, I wish that everything goes perfect, right, and we never have issues. But when I'm gonna tell you, if and when they come, my charge to you is that I'm going to be there with you to kind of walk you through these situations. And a lot of, franchisors, you're just another number.
Yeah.
And, good luck talking to the CEO, right? Good luck, getting a call back. And we want to be proactive and we want to put systems in place that, our franchisees are successful.
It's interesting. I think the majority, the truth is, the majority of franchisees, they're never going to be entrepreneurial. Which, that, I mean, there's good in that, because you to question the model too much. But almost every entrepreneur that finds success can point to a point where they said, I had to battle through X, whether it was, how am I going to struggle to pay or hit my payroll, or I had a failing restaurant, I had to shut it down. Like, almost every entrepreneur points to it. But because you're entrepreneurial, and because you have such a strong belief on what the future might look like, then those little bumps and bruises don't affect you so much. You just use it as another step to trying to find this constant fight for whatever equals happiness. And if a franchisee is not entrepreneurial, then they hit those bumps and bruises, and they really deteriorate those franchisees. Because if you don't have that really thick skin to say, I'm going to fall probably 20 times before I find success, then all of a sudden, when they hit those speed bumps, it derails them, and they're done. But I find it fascinating that you're saying this, because the truth is, if we can come to the true conclusion that a franchisee, when they hit those speed bumps, are going to fail because they don't know how to recover, and you're saying, before you fall completely on the ground, I'm going to reach my hand out, I'm going to grab you on the shoulder, and I'm going to lift you back up. I'm going to give you my lifeline as an entrepreneur. That ultimately should make a great franchisor, because that's the back that they need, because they don't have the ability to find that inside them. They're not entrepreneurial. They don't know how to recover from those speed bumps.
It's amazing. A lot of times they don't even know what they don't know. They don't know when they're in trouble. They don't know right? Especially if they're first time being an entrepreneur, they don't know what's going on. So I think it's us, obviously through our QSCs, through our monthly meetings, to really gauge where our franchisees are at, and if we're doing our job, we're being proactive and we're playing offense.
So as you reflect back on the way that you're operating the business, do you find that some of the playbooks of supporting, of having people's backs, is somewhat traits learned from your experience with the NFL?
No, absolutely. I think it was an old New Jack City. I think it was CMB, and then the other guys would yell out, "We all we got."
Yeah.
And I feel like when you become a franchisor, I feel like I should have their back, and I should be able to be supportive to them, and not it's not a situation where it's a it's a cash machine and I'm great. They're paying royalties. Everything is good. I'm going to leave them alone. I think having that dialogue is going to be important as we continue to grow because we want to do a good job. And I think our ultimate success is going to be tied to our franchisee success. So helping them become successful, solve problems are ultimately going to lead us to where we want to go.
Is that a sports mentality or is it a captain mentality?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think as in football and as a captain, I knew we were only as strong as our weakest link. When you're playing the Patriots and Tom Brady is the quarterback, and they look over and see your lineup, and if he sees any weakness, guess where the ball is going. So understanding that before we get into Sunday, on Thursday, I'm pulling in the weakness, and I'm having a conversation, and we'll watch a film breaking it down. I'm like, hey, when we're in this situation and we're in this call, if he recognizes it and he adjusts, I'm going to adjust as well. So making those type of adjustments is something that you just have to be, your mentality, again, you got to be playing offense. You got to be proactive. You got to be thinking ahead. I was always a chess player. And in chess, right, you got to be 3, 4, 5, 10 moves ahead if you're going to be successful. And I think the restaurant industry is the same thing, trying to peek around corners before we actually get there.
Yeah, I love that mentality because I think if more franchisors behave that way, and forget about whether it's chess or it's sports or it's being a captain, and it's really true. The true fact is that you're only as fast as your slowest teammate. So in a world of franchising, you're always going to have a bottom third. It's inevitable. Whether that bottom third is great or good or bad, you're going to have a bottom third. And oftentimes franchisors get criticized for putting too much focus on that group when it's like focus on the top 60% that are going to make you more money. But the reality is, if you can pick up those bottoms, you're going to find more validation. You're going to be true to your word of letting them into your system because at the end of the day, you said yes. There's probably some truth into trying to carry more of that "I got your back" mentality in the way that you operate a business.
Yeah, and I think ultimately there's not a fine line, but I understand that there's going to be a situation where, and I had to do it myself. You have to close the store. There's nothing else that could be done. We did everything. We rebranded. We went out in the community. Something happened. Something occurred. The traffic pattern changed. Whatever that case is, and I understand that, and that's going to be a very tough conversation. I mean, it's tough for me, but I have experience going through that. Even in bad times, if someone is respectful and treats you with respect, even if you don't succeed, you can still look at that individual and say, man, they're bust their ass for me. They worked hard, but it just didn't work. And I think when you sign up, I mean, I take great pride in someone trusting in me and in our business to sign up as a franchisee. So I think me working hard and me having the ability to be proactive in those situations, I think that's something that I ought to do as a franchisor.
I appreciate that statement because I think far too often it's the drive for money, drive for growth, and franchisees get left behind. And I think that's the right mentality. One other thing that I wanted to get your take on. There's been two strong viewpoints. It seems like there's not much gray area on whether athletes pure athletes, whether you're professional or college or whatever, can make a great franchisee. The argument of why sometimes an athlete doesn't make a great franchisee is because, especially those that have the financial bandwidth to become one, if it's a larger investment, the argument against would be your entire life you're put on a pedestal, especially if you're a professional athlete, that someone that is considered heavily recruited, drafted, starter, that because you've been handed so much, handed so much, that when you become a franchisee, you're going to be like, well, I gave you my name. This should automatically make money. So that's the argument that I've heard against. And then the argument for is everything that you just said, the team mentality, having some financial bandwidth to leverage. Maybe didn't make the money that you expected. You bought your mom or dad a house. Your money gets depleted. You don't have a lot left. This gives you an opportunity to apply the team mentality back to a business concept and create wealth for yourself. So I've heard both sides of the argument, and my take is actually somewhere in the middle, that it really depends on the person. Like the human DNA is what ultimately decides whether you're good or not. Do you have any opinions on athletes becoming franchisees? Do you sit in a position of this is what I believe?
Yeah, so I believe athletes are very capable individuals, and like any group or population, you can't group every athlete into thinking that they're going to be the ones that just wants to lend a name and not going to show up and do the work. I get called a bunch from buddies of mine who are franchisees in other systems, and they're about to start off. And I have a real frank conversation with them. And the biggest thing that I can do for a professional athlete is manage their expectations.
Yeah,
Because,
that's it.
like you said, they were recruited and things were all great. And a lot of times they never experience adversity. And in those situations, you really have to level set them on what's going to be necessary, what's going to be required. Like I had to turn people away from the Stacked Pickle franchise for my athlete because he wanted his parents to run it. He was a partier. He wanted to come in and, sit at the bar. And I'm like, that's not the definition of owning a franchise.
Yeah.
Like you actually have to work. It's funny. Someone said, a corporate guy said, I want to own a franchise because I want to see my family more. And someone laughingly said, like, yeah, sure, you're going to see your family. Your wife is going to be the host. Your son's going to be back on grill. And your daughter's going to be the bartender. Like, come on.
All right. So my last question, and I'm gonna preface it by saying, ultimately I'm on this hunt. I want to find it. I have moments of it, but because I have large dreams, I would say I'm constantly fighting to get there. But do you feel happy? Is the question? Do you feel like you found happiness? In my life, I feel like I have a lot of it on my personal side that I feel really, really comfortable, that I fought hard to find it, but in my business life, I don't. How do you feel? Do you feel happy?
Man, that is a loaded question. So I think happiness is so amazing, right? Because it's something that is not really a real definition. Like, what is happiness? What do you mean? Because again, in our personal life, I'm geek this out when I'm home to see my kids, but business, there's always challenges, opportunities, growth. If you're an entrepreneur, you're always building. So you celebrate little things along the way. But I really think I am happy, and I think it's tied to my gratefulness.
Yeah.
And some people say, they're grateful for things and gratitude, but I believe in like being actively grateful. And what I mean by actively grateful, you're healthy, you're in shape, you have the ability to run, to work out, to exercise. So you're going to be grateful, and you're actually going to do those things. So that's great. You're grateful for those abilities, but you don't do anything with it. So I'm grateful in the sense that I read, I go to conferences, I speak one-on-one with different individuals. And I think that's where my happiness comes from, because so many people have the ability to do so much. And the definition we would always in football talk about what's the difference between a stick of dynamite and just a tree branch stick, right? And the difference is potential. But
Right.
if the dynamite is never lit, there is no difference.
Right.
So I think it's the fact that I'm actually a dynamite that was lit on fire and I'm active. I think I'm extremely happy because I could be like a lot of other NFL players and just retire and sitting around and loafing and golfing. But the fact that I'm like in business, I'm making things happen. I think I'm grateful. So I derive my happiness from that.
I love it, dude. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for the friendship that we've been building. I am looking forward to seeing this journey come true. I've never really saw you as a former athlete as big of a sports fan is, but I think that's because the first second we ever talked, it was so much bigger than that. It had nothing to do with the fact that you could kick someone's ass on a football field. I've always been impressed with you, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate you giving us some time too.
No problem, man.